I got marijuana meetings today.
Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Restore Louisiana Task Force meeting set for today's date here in the great city of Abbeville. We have a lot of presentations today. I think they're all going to be interesting, so we look forward to that. Madam Clerk, since I've called the meeting to order, please call the roll.
Mr. Bradbury, Mr. Kluwat, Mr. Dortez, Mr. Durbin,
Present.
Mr. Falk, Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Gissel, Representative James, Mr. Knapp,
Here.
Senator Morrish, Mayor Norris, Mr. Olivier,
Here.
Mr. Pearson, Representative Pope, Mr. Riley, Dr. Richardson, Mayor President Robideau,
Here.
Representative Shadowin, Commissioner Strain,
Here.
Mayor Tyler,
Here.
Dr. Wilson, Ms. Wyatt. Sir Chair, 6 members are present. We do not have a quorum.
Thank you. You do have a copy of the minutes of the last meeting in your packet. Those minutes are of the meeting that took place in my city of Denham Springs, and we had a wonderful meeting. So if you I highly recommend a review if you were not at that particular meeting. So we will not take action on the minutes of that particular meeting of August the 18th. Next item is my remarks. I'd like to start by my opening remarks with a very special thank you to the leaders and residents of Vermilion Parish for hosting us here today. Vermilion Parish is one of the top 10 most impacted parishes of the great floods of 2016. We recognize the strength of this parish and commend its leadership and residents for their commitment and devotion to bringing their community back stronger. We chose to hold our meeting in Vermilion Parish today because using our data analysis, over 56% of the flood victims in this area with FEMA verified loss have not filled out the Restore Louisiana Homeowners Assistance Program survey. That calculates to approximately 1,001 missing surveys. We are hoping to reach some of those victims here today and assist them in the survey step of the process. As some of you may have noticed upon arriving, there are tables set up right outside this meeting room with representatives of the Restore Louisiana Homeowners Assistance Program who can help submit surveys and answer questions homeowners may have. The following is an update on the progress of the Restore Louisiana Homeowner Program. We now have over 44,000 flood victims who have completed the Restore Louisiana Homeowner Assistance Program survey. More than 28,000 environmental reviews have been completed, which represents 75% of the homeowners currently in phases 1 through 6. Over 14,000 homeowners from phase 1 through 3 have been invited to complete an application. Of those, over 8,500 have submitted. As of today, approximately 600 homeowners have received grant award acknowledgments through the Homeowner Assistance Program. That totals nearly $18 million of the funds allocated to Louisiana getting out to Louisiana homeowners. If you recall, in March of this year, HUD approved the state's request for a 1-year extension on reimbursement of pre-award expenses for both the March and August 2016 flood events, extending the deadline to September 8, 2017. Because so many people are still working on their homes, on August the 25th, 2017, the state formally requested an additional 1-year extension of the reimbursement of eligible pre-application cost to September 8, 2018. I am glad and happy to tell you that HUD approved this request on September 7th, 2017. We know we have a long way to go to help everyone recover from these floods. We know that if you are still not back in your home, none of these things makes much difference. You still need help. And this task force is committed to seeing that you get that help as quickly as possible within the system we have to work in. As I always do, I'll close my opening remarks with this extremely important reminder. If you are a homeowner and were impacted by the March and August floods of 2016, please take the homeowner flood damage survey. It does not matter where you are in your rebuilding process. We need to know what kind of help you need in the recovery. This is also the first step in applying and qualifying for assistance. Please visit the website, and I will spell it out, restore.la.gov. Thank you. All right. This time, I would like to invite to come to the table to speak Mr. Ronald Darby, President of Vermilion Parish. Parish President.
Turn around toward the audience.
Oh, you may. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just pull that mic up to you right there and swing it around. I'm sure that gentleman right there will be happy to help you.
Yes, sir.
Pick it up, you're going to start singing.
He might.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to say welcome to the Restoring Task Force and every agency that's represented here today. Know most of you guys personally, but I won't name their names. Might miss somebody. I want to thank Todd, especially from the governor's office, because the governor's been pushing this for so long, trying to get our residents in Vermilion Parish back up and running to their normal life. I thank the mayors for being here today. Thank for the parish presidents that's here today. Monique from the Canaan Planning Commission, which I serve on that board also too. We've been talking about drainage for a long time prior to the 2016 incident that occurred in Vermilion Parish. We had over like 1,600 homes, families affected by the flood. 1,500 to 2,000 families we had to rescue from that. You know, it was real devastating to our family, to our community. It's stirred from flood because the properties that flooded along the river had never flooded before, had never had any kind of problems according to the every time we had a storm or something like that came through here, those properties were never affected by that. Normally, the southern part of the parish would be affected some kind of way or other, and those people there that couldn't afford anything would always get flooded or get affected by the storm. But most of the families along the river, some of them, you know, like we got it, their properties back up and running, they was able to do so. But you still have a pretty good amount of people that's in the Maurice area, some in the Abbeville area, that still need some help. And we try to get the word out. We sent out letters to all those families. We sent out like 1,600 letters to all those families that was affected. Also, we posted things in the city halls to let people know about the Restore Act, you know, to try to get them the help that they need. A lot of them didn't do the survey, so we're still trying to get people to get surveys. I see some residents here. I'll call a few of them myself to try to get them here to try to get the answers answered, you know, that they need, the questions answered that they need. So welcome to Vermilion Parish. Enjoy our community. Stop off and get you something to eat before you leave out. You know, like you spend the money here. And like once again, I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And we wish your family the best, Mr. Darby.
Thank you very much.
Next person I would like to invite to come up and speak is Mayor Mark Piazza, City of Abbeville Mayor. Good morning.
Good morning. See if we can perfect this microphone situation here. Good morning to everyone. And welcome to beautiful, historic downtown Abbeville. You know, last year, Abbeville suffered the worst flood in 76 years. But we only got 20 inches of rain. And I say only because if this year has taught us anything, it has taught us that we can get a lot more. just when we thought last year was like the most devastating thing that's ever happened, then we see what's happened over there in Houston and Beaumont and Port Arthur. And it's like, oh my God, 40-something inches of rain, that would just completely devastate this entire area from the Gulf of Mexico to Lafayette. So the reason I say that is because we just can't do it without the help and funds from the state and federal government. And, you know, it's just so important that we participate in something like the Restore Act, because the more participants we get that qualify, then the message goes out to the federal government how desperate we are and how badly we need it. So we need to send that message out and make that message very clear. And I want to thank the Restore Task Force for your hard work and efforts. I have a good friend, Mayor Tyler, all the way from Shreveport, that came down here today. Welcome to Abbeville.
Thank you, sir.
And you know, it's just very important. So I'll keep my speech short. I want to just welcome everybody that's out here today. Again, like Ronald said, not to name any names, my fellow mayor from Maurice, Wayne Terrio. But, you know, one thing I did want to mention while Mayor Robideau's here is that there's only two cities that the Vermilion River flows through, Lafayette and Abbeville. But the drainage is so vast from all the way from St. Martinville, where Guy Cormier comes from, all the way down here. And you know what they say about where water flows downhill? Well, we're down here, downhill. And whatever happens in those areas north of here, and every time I hear Lafayette talk about improving drainage, well, it makes us cringe down here, because you've got the developments over there in Youngsville, the developments over in Broussard, Maurice is growing like crazy. The water has to go somewhere, and all that water's got to come down here. So we need to learn a lesson from that, and we need to, you know, look at the entire picture of who all you're going to affect and where the water's going. So just wanted to mention that while Mayor Robideau's here, and he and I have had that discussion before. He knows that we're very conscious about that down here. So again, enjoy your day here, learn from this experience, and like Ronald said, we've got some great seafood restaurants right here in Abbeville, so be sure and participate in that on your way out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Next I invite to come speak is Mayor Kirk Champagne, City of Kaplan.
He's not here.
He's not here. Okay, moving on. Invite to the front Mayor Wayne Terrio, Village of Maurice.
He's here.
Welcome.
Y'all.
You can sit or you
I'm
can...
gonna sit.
Great.
Something like this,
Just bring the mic closer.
accomplish this then.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
I'm Wayne Terrio from Maurice. Maurice is on the northern part of Vermilion Parish, right adjacent to Lafayette Parish. And,
Let's get some point closer.
okay, I'll hold it.
It just needs to be cut on.
Okay. And we're about a 2-mile square, and we were severely impacted. May not have the numbers that Denham Springs had, but in that 2-mile square, we had 84 homes that were severely impacted, substantially impacted. Of that 84 homes, people that were impacted, probably only 15% had flood insurance. I personally was impacted. I was one of the lucky ones. We did have flood insurance. Started buying it in 1980. My wife would fuss at me, we were wasting money. Always said that we would never flood. And on the afternoon, at about 2 o'clock on August 13th, we evacuated our home in a boat. And as we were wading through basically 2.5, 3 feet of water, she turned and apologized.
She said you were right?
She said, so we're one of the lucky ones. And as I said, in our community, there was only about 15%. And we have some members of our community that are still trying to recover. There's one young lady here, and we've worked with her, trying to work with her, and she's not any closer to recovering what she was on August 12th, 13th. They need assistance. And, this is all fine and dandy, you fill out these surveys, but we need to know when they're going to get assistance. We've tried different in various agencies, going to different things. So, our community, I live in an area that had never flooded. Even the great flood of 1940, never flooded. I live a block from City Hall. We totally lost City Hall. We lost the police station. The fire station flooded. St. Alphonse Church flooded. So we were drastically impacted. Of the 84 homes, probably we have 10 families that have actually left. Now, Maurice is experiencing a phenomenal growth. Mayor Robideau will attest to that. We in the process of building about 350 home subdivisions right now. But our infrastructure was impacted, and I say our infrastructure, our governmental functions. It took us about, when I say City Hall flooded, we lost everything. Communications, records, and everything. It took us about 2 weeks to formulate some type of form of government. And now we're struggling out of 2 temporary trailers, one for the administration and one for our courtroom and meeting room. We're working with FEMA, some representatives here, we're working with them. But it's same to say that we're not any closer, just like the young lady. We're not any closer than what we were back a year and 2 months ago. So we appreciate y'all coming here, appreciate y'all listening. I guess beg you that if we can get these families assistance as quick as possible so that they can get back into their homes, whatever they may be, and get back to their life. So thank y'all for coming, thank y'all for listening.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes,
ask a question,
Commissioner?
please? Yeah,
Sure.
Mike Strine, Commissioner Valley.
Yes.
One of the discussions we've had in other areas is that, as we're seeing the population shifts and you're building new subdivisions, people moving closer to the interstates, and of course, we'll call it the eternal, continual city. The discussion is, if we get another rain event, are you working with the Corps of anything? Look how we get this water to the Gulf eventually. I know, because I guess at the end of the day, all of our drainage systems really need to be looked at, because what's going to happen when we get another big event next year or the next year?
They are looking at that, don't know the exact name, but I think Mayor Robideau, Guy Cormier, and
Yeah.
Mr. Darby and all, they're looking at that, the Vermilion watershed.
Yes, sir.
And what can be done.
What we can do?
I know locally, we have a mid-sized coulee, the Coulee George. It goes to the Coulee Ildecon that separates Vermilion Parish and Lafayette Parish, which is the major drainage for a good portion of Lafayette Parish that is on our northern part that goes to the Vermilion. Our drainage district, Coulee County Drainage District, is right now doing a major project to get that Coulee George to where it gets to the Coulee Ildecon, which will drastically maybe reduce the amount of backlog of water as it's draining. So kind of cleaning that out, because if you take a glass of water and I want to fill it, and I open the faucet, and it'll fill that 8-10 ounce glass of water in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds. But if I put my hand over it, it'll fill it, but it'll fill it in about 20 seconds. So then cleaning that coulee helps take those restrictions out.
Right.
Now, those restrictions go all the way down to where the Vermilion empties into the Gulf. So all that would need to be, and I think there is a project that they are looking at that in the Corps. We're working with the Corps, or they're working with the Corps, and they're going to do studies on that. But we're doing things locally to kind of maybe alleviate some of the issues.
Okay.
I hope that answers your
It
question.
does, thank you.
Mayor Tyler?
Good morning, thank you so much. Mayor Terrio, I'm trying to understand, it appears that your citizens are not getting what they need. Did I hear you say they've done the surveys and they've made the applications and you still
As
haven't?
far as I know, and as I said, the young lady is here. That's probably the one that's suffering the most right now
Okay.
of our citizens. As far as I know, I would hope that she has done the survey. I know she has worked with us. We've contacted various agencies and we're trying to get something, or she's trying to get something. So, those are people we feel for.
Okay.
As I said, myself, we were flooded, but we're back. Not to say we wouldn't need any assistance, but we're back. We're able to. But you have families that are still kind of suffering. And I would say that the young lady here, Ms. Mouton, that she's probably the one that's, I guess, furthest behind.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay. Thank you, Mayor
Appreciate y'all
Terry.
coming, appreciate y'all listening.
Thank you.
Oh. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we invite to come forward Ms. Erin Monroe Wesley of the Governor's Office to give us an update from Governor John Bell Edwards. Ms. Wesley?
Good
Nice
morning,
to see you
Mr.
again.
Chair and members of the task force. I want to spend a few minutes today talking about the state's recovery and rescue efforts in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, and also provide an update on the governor's recent trip to Washington, D.C. to discuss the Comey River Diversion Project. As you know, Governor Edwards declared a state of emergency in Louisiana as Hurricane Harvey approached landfall. As we made the necessary preparations for the storm in Louisiana, the governor made certain that state resources were put into place immediately to respond to the needs of our neighbors in Texas who were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. Over 12 years ago, Texas opened their doors to the people of Louisiana as Hurricane Katrina approached. So more than a dozen agencies jumped into action in response to Harvey. This includes the Louisiana National Guard, which deployed more than 950 soldiers and airmen for search and rescue missions. These brave men and women evacuated more than 2,800 people and pets and manned security and other missions throughout Louisiana and East Texas. The Department of Wildlife and Fisheries provided 10 boats for search and rescue operations in Louisiana and 24 boats for similar operations in Texas, rescuing 28 people and 2 pets from Louisiana homes and over 1,500 people and roughly 190 pets from Texas. And I do want to thank Commissioner Strand with your leadership in housing these pets in shelters here. The Department of Children and Family Services operated 2 state mega shelters in Alexandria and Shreveport to house roughly 2,000 Texans. The Department of Transportation Development, along with Louisiana State Police, they worked collaboratively in the transport of Texas residents to those shelters. And so simply wanted to highlight some of the agency work to give you a sense of the depth of the state's emergency preparedness and our response in these times of disaster. And we will certainly continue to work and make sure that we're a resource to our neighbors in Texas and Florida in their time of need, while ensuring that our own state's recovery from the 2016 flooding events continues without delay. And briefly want to talk about the governor's trip to D.C. As you know, the governor traveled to Washington, D.C. this past Monday along with DOTD Secretary Sean Wilson, and the goal was to work with the Corps to discuss the Comey Diversion Canal project. The purpose of the trip was to reaffirm the state's commitment, both from a financial and policy perspective, to complete the Comey Diversion Canal project, and most importantly, to seek the same from the Corps. The state is positioned to meet its financial commitment through capital outlay funding, which currently has $15 million in Priority 1 and $72 million in Priority 5. The Corps made a firm commitment to the state of Louisiana to move this project forward. The Corps accepted the state's letter of intent, which positions the state to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Corps. The MOA will speak to federal, state, and local funding commitments and the phased approach of delivering segments of independent utility over time to complete the project. On yesterday, the governor met with Congressman Graves, a representative from Congressman Richmond's office, members of the Capital Region Legislative Delegation, representatives from the Ames River Basin Commission, and leaders from Ascension Parish, East Baton Rouge Parish, and Livingston Parish to discuss the state's path forward in supporting the completion of Comey and to ensure local partnership in funding this project. And so again, just wanted to give you a short brief on his trip and to talk about our flood recovery efforts and response efforts from Harvey. I did have some notes about timing and timeline in terms of the homeowner assistance program, but Chairman, you eloquently shared those notes in your opening remarks. So I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Question? Mayor Robideau?
Thank you. Aaron, thank you for that information. I know that, I think it's today or sometime soon, the legislature is going to recognize a surplus from last year. And what I would ask of the governor's office is just to give consideration to possibly having more mitigation money or some piece of that. Because what's happening is, as you know, in the Acadiana region, we took the hazardous mitigation and we're approaching it from a regional perspective, which I think is the appropriate thing to do. But in doing that, we're looking at how we can best affect the entire watershed.
Yes.
and help everybody out. But what gets left out of that equation is these smaller municipalities and these drainage districts that exist may or may not then qualify for some mitigation money, because we really are trying to do the big projects that will allow the best results. And so if there's any piece of that surplus that could be reserved for some of these smaller municipalities throughout the state to then be able to tap into, I just think it would be both a goodwill gesture and something that's much needed in those areas that they may or may not have as easy access to with the way that the Acadiana regions agreed to do their mitigation.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we do have some constitutional restrictions in terms of once a surplus is recognized, but that could free up monies elsewhere to be able to be shifted to mitigation projects.
Yeah.
So we'll look at the totality of that and evaluate
That's right,
those
yeah, and I know
resources.
it's the 5 restrictions, and my thought was that possibly some drainage infrastructure may qualify. So just if y'all could look into that, I think it would be appreciated. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Ms. Wesley,
Mr. Knapp?
the money that you outlined for the Comey project, can you go over those sources again? I know that the estimates had been rough in some earlier conversations, so I know that the number potentially for the full project and the duration of the project could be over $200 million by some estimates. So just kind of touch base on where those are, and is for the portions that are in capital outlay in priority 1 and priority 5, you know, how much the Corps is doing, what the match looks like, and then kind of the timing of the total project from beginning to end. Can you just kind of go over those again?
So the state funding from a capital outlay perspective, there's $15 million in priority 1 and $72 million in priority 5. In terms of our ask of the Corps, it's been $125 million. And so as we look, we talked about independent utilities, so we're looking at how to have a phased approach to the completion of the project. And so that first completion around Lily Bayou, I believe we talked about roughly a $20 million figure. I'm looking back to see.
It's higher.
It's higher than that?
Yes.
Oh, there's Casey. I'm gonna ask Casey Tingle to come up. He was part of that meeting. So I can get the figures right, at least on that portion. But it will be a phased approach.
Good morning, Casey Tingle with GOSEP. Aaron, I don't know that DOTD probably has the better numbers, but the approach that was laid out yesterday was to basically get the Corps' buy-in to work together to front-load some of the state dollars into completing the next functional element, which is basically all of the work around Highway 61, the move of the utilities, and then I think the next bridge. And to accomplish those, that infrastructure, the bridges, as well as to then connect that portion of the canal to the Lily Bayou structure, which is already there and completed. And so the approach is for the state to move more aggressively in terms of using state dollars. The Corps has $6.7 million that's appropriated to them now, and I think what the general committed to is that as they get better information about what their work plan and budget is for appropriation would be for the next fiscal year, that they would look to keep adding money as they go. And so basically, I think the change in the approach is to, instead of looking at the totality of the project, to find the money to build the next piece, and then to keep working at finding the money to build the subsequent pieces. And I think what the commitment from the state is, and from the governor's office, is to apply the capital outlay money that we have available, the money that the ARBC currently has available through the tax collection, as well as the money that the Corps of Engineers has, and to build the first functional element, basically. There is still a delta. I think that delta is roughly $30 million to complete the first functional element, which is the difference between those three pots of money and what's needed to complete. But that process is expected to take about 18 months to complete that first element. And the anticipation is that the Corps would realize additional funds throughout that 18-month period, them going ahead and executing their contracting authority, which then allows them more flexibility and leverage of those dollars as they become available, because now they've got an open contract and open work plan. And then should the state need to find additional dollars to continue to shrink that $30 million gap over time, that potentially moving some of the capital outlay money forward to help bridge that gap. And so I think the position of the governor is that the state is going to lean forward and utilize the money that's available to begin construction under the Corps of the first functional element to get it through that Highway 61 bridge, and then maybe even, I think there's another bridge that comes into play that will at least connect to Baton Rouge Bayou. So that's where the utility comes in. Without being able to connect to Baton Rouge Bayou, you're just digging the ditch and you're just moving utilities. Connecting to Baton Rouge Bayou will begin to provide some relief, at least for those communities upstream in Baker and to some extent Zachary. I think the bigger relief for them comes in the next bayou, but that at least gets the ball rolling, gets construction underway, and gets the Corps committed through contracting capacity to the project in a way that they're not currently positioned.
Question from, I have a question, thanks. So if I hear you correctly, both of y'all, there is money that has been appropriated by the legislature, in some in category 1 and some in category 5, and some that has been raised by property taxes in the 3 parishes in the Amite River Basin Drainage District that is presently in the hands of the Amite River Basin Commission. That's going to be pooled together to fund the operations and construction by the Corps of Engineers. So this is going to be a Corps of Engineer from Lily Bayou going east to the railroad tracks, crossing that, and then crossing the north lanes and south lanes of US Highway 61, going east, whatever distance that money will allow, right?
That's correct. The first functional element gets at least through 61, the railroad bridge, and it continues going because it picks up at least as far as Baton Rouge Bayou. Okay. And so that's where we get benefits from the project, is at least connecting to that bayou begins to provide some relief to that portion of the project. And it would be still contracted under the Corps using their plans and designs. The change would be that the state is, instead of holding back and only matching the Corps as they move along, we're moving our portion of the project up to get it started.
I just want to clarify for those in the audience and also President Robideau that this is money that has already been appropriated and raised through property taxes, not something that is coming from any other funds like a surplus or whatever, specifically for the Comite Diversion Canal, right?
Correct.
Am I right on that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I just want everyone to be clear.
That capital outlay is already there, and that local tax has been in place since, I think, the year 2000, and it was then renewed again in 2010.
Okay.
And we also tax East Baton Rouge Parish, Livingston, Ascension Parish in terms of their hazard mitigation dollars. For example, East Baton Rouge Parish received about $112 million. And so they are partnering together, working with DOTD to possibly provide some additional funding toward the project. And so we do want some local skin in the game as well.
Sure, yeah,
On the project.
okay. Any questions on what I just brought up? Okay. Adam, good? Okay, thank you all, appreciate it. Okay, I want to make an announcement for everyone in the audience today. There will be a public comment period nearing the end of the next presentation. Public comment, that means I will declare a public comment period there are going to be cards in the back of the room. Portia, where are you? Okay, look in the back if you want to come up and make a comment, ask a question or whatever. This young lady, Portia, holding up green cards, those are public comment cards. We ask that everyone wishing to comment, please get a card, fill it out, so that we can go in a orderly fashion, bringing folks up to speak. Just, Portia, you just raise your hand. There you go. Hold the green card up again so anyone wishing to speak. All right, good deal. Okay, moving forward, we now invite to come forward and speak the Executive Director of the Office of Community Development, Pat Forbes. Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the task force. Good morning.
Good morning.
We'll step through my presentation, but first I want to make sure that everybody in the audience knows that we do have folks outside, Restore program folks at the table who they have a computer and can help you. If you're wondering where you are in the process, if you haven't filled out the survey and want to do that, if you have questions about your application, staff folks out there should be able to look at your file and get some help for you. Also want to make sure everybody realizes this meeting is being live streamed on the governor's Facebook page and on the Restore Louisiana website. Okay. Today's presentation will generally be an update on where we are on various programs. You're all very familiar with the programs. I will do a brief description of each one at the beginning nonetheless. First program we will talk about the homeowner program. $1.3 billion of the $1.7 billion that we have allocated. Is that better? Okay. 1.3 billion of the 1.7 billion that is allocated is in the homeowner program. Program objective, obviously, bring people back to their homes as quickly as we can and is assisting as many people as we can in the process. It is a long process. I cannot argue with folks who say this takes too long. We know that it takes too long. If your house flooded over a year ago and you're not back home, that's too long to be out of your house when we have this assistance to get to you. But the processes for delivering the money from Congress to HUD to the state and building the program so that we can comply with all the federal laws is onerous. We are managing it, I think, as well as anybody ever has, and we'll continue to work hard to do that. But you can see we have a lot of steps in this process. We have people in and through each of these stages, but first, folks have to take the survey. It's the thing that we talk about a lot. It not only helps us help you as a homeowner, it also helps the state and your neighbors in that it gives the governor and the congressional delegation the additional information that they need to demonstrate our unmet needs to Congress so that we can get additional funding. With Harvey and Irma and now Maria getting allocations and appropriations, it makes sense for us to continue to tell the story in Washington of our remaining unmet needs. And without everybody's survey information, we can't do that. We then go out and do an environmental record review. That is another thing that the governor has fought hard to get some relief from. We have not been able to get that relief to date, and it does not look like they changed the rules for this Harvey appropriation either. So consequently, every single home that gets worked on has an environmental site-specific review done, and we have done some 22,000 of those now. We innovated, as you know, and did those before we got to the application phase so that we could let people keep working on their homes. You are invited to complete an application in phases. We have talked about this a lot. We have 6 phases in the program, and we are inviting folks in those phases as opposed to everybody. There are a few good reasons for that. One is the efficiency of delivery of the program. We won't be able to handle everybody at once, and so consequently, we have to phase folks in so that, one, the system isn't flooded, and two, it allows us to prioritize who we assist first, and that's the most vulnerable folks in our communities, low to moderate income, elderly, and people with disabilities. This is all internal. The eligibility determination, that's just looking at your paperwork. Whenever you complete the application, the program is going to ask you to send in some paperwork, including proof of occupancy, ownership, income, things like that. That all goes through this eligibility process. We then have to do a damage assessment. That we will actually have to come into the home. That will be scheduled with the homeowner so that the inspectors can come in, look at how much work you've gotten done, how much work is yet to go, so that we can assess the damages and arrive at a award determination. At that point, the contractor looks at the house with you, we make sure the numbers are all good and execute a grant agreement, and then the construction starts. And the construction can occur in two different ways if you have prospective work on your house. One is if you want to use your own contractor, you're perfectly welcome to do that. If you want to use the program's contractor and not have to enter a contract with the contractor and just let the state handle all that, you can do that too. And it's completely the homeowner's choice as to which one of those they choose. Few recent developments. I think Aaron alluded to a couple of these already. At your last meeting, you approved an expansion of the eligible population for the homeowner program to include folks with flood insurance in phases 2 through 6. We also increased the reimbursement from 25% to 50%. For those folks in phases 3 through 6, and went from 50% to 100% of construction cost on prospective construction. The action plan amendment that we submitted subsequent to your approval has now been approved by HUD, so we are putting those pieces into the program software now. Another really big event that has occurred is the approval by HUD of our request for extending the reimbursement period. We had already requested a reimbursement extension, as you know, from last March to this past September. Well, the data that we have gathered by going in, doing these damage assessments in people's homes, is that the vast majority of people have done a good bit of work, but the vast majority of people are also not through yet. Had we not gotten this extension, any work that people did after September 8th of 2017, we would not have been able to reimburse for. This extension of an additional year means people can keep working, we can keep processing them through our system and reimburse them for that work that they've done. So that's a huge help for us, especially knowing what we know about where folks are in their rebuilding processes. In addition, Governor Edwards again sent a letter to Congress requesting elimination of SBA loans as consideration as a duplication of benefits. The letter was quite extensive and detailed, but I think everybody is familiar with that issue. SBA loans, even if people don't draw them down, the amount for which they're approved is a duplication of benefits under the federal law right now, and we have not been able to move Congress off that. Key updates, we have gotten now over 44,000 homeowners who have completed the survey. 36,500 of those are actually eligible in phases right now. Over 28,000, sorry, I said 22,000 earlier, 28,000 environmental reviews have been completed. Again, that's a step that we do before people even complete the application. Over 12,000 homeowners have been invited to apply, and 8,200 of those have actually applied. We have performed 2,250 damage assessments that are in our software. We've actually visited over 4,000 homes to perform damage assessments, but 2,250 of those are in our system now. That's an additional step that's got to occur. And over 600 homeowners have received grant awards of nearly $18 million. Going to move to the neighborhood landlord program. It has $49 million allocation. Again, as you all know, Louisiana had a dire shortage of affordable rental housing before the floods. The floods made that worse. Some 27,000 flooded rental properties across the state in March and August. The primary objectives of the neighborhood landlord program, as well as the next one I'm going to talk about, multifamily, is to expand the affordable rental housing base. There are eligible applicants or for-profit landlords who flooded, nonprofit developers, and public housing authorities. There's been a great deal of outreach to make sure that people are aware of this program. I won't read all the numbers to you, but 26 contingent commitment award letters totaling $10.9 million have been mailed, but that is in addition to, if you go to the next page, the $39,482,000 that's already been awarded. So we're getting close to full subscription on this program. We so far have awarded amounts to create 401 affordable units. You can see that depending on the grantee, the years of affordability is different. You also can see that we're spending less or more money depending on the various different types of applicants. But whenever, for instance, if you look at the public housing authorities, we know that their affordability period is going to be 30 years. So the $127,000 a unit helps us spread that affordability over a longer period of time. As we've seen post-Katrina in New Orleans, some of the affordability requirements are starting to run out, and that's creating some issues with respect to affordable housing market. If you go to the next page, you can see the parishes where the neighborhood landlord program has made loans already, or commitments, rather. It's well spread out across the state. The sister program to neighborhood landlord, I should have said, is only for properties up to 7 units in the property. Multifamily restoration loan fund is for developments with 20 or more units. Again, eligible applicants are developers who already have existing affordable, developers who are willing to convert their properties to 51% affordable, and then public housing authorities. The repayment requirements for this program vary depending on whether you're a public housing authority or a private for-profit developer. Some numbers here. This program is not nearly as heavily subscribed as the neighborhood landlord program. There are a couple of differences, one of which is when you're working with bigger developments like this, they will generally wait until the application deadline to submit their application, because it is a much more complicated and detailed application process to go through, including pro forma income statements and things like that. So we have extended the application deadline to October. To the end of September. We expect to see a flow of applications in before then. But I will say that at that point, we will be revisiting whether this is the best place to leave the funds. There are a lot of pieces in that decision, one of which is affordability, cost per unit. The cost per unit in this multifamily is far and away the most cost-effective way to develop more units at $23,000 a unit. But if we can't get applicants in, we've got to get that money invested in some shape, form, or fashion. And so we will be reevaluating once we hit the deadline at the end of the month, whether this is the right place to leave all this money or whether it makes sense to move some or all of the remaining funds into other programs, potentially a piggyback type program, or potentially, if we wind up oversubscribed in the neighborhood landlord program, some continued form of the neighborhood landlord program. Again, you can see where the funds have been applied for across the state. Generally, this will wind up being in larger metropolitan areas because of the requirement that it be at least 20 units. Rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, again, $24 million total budget for those two. The purpose, again, of these programs is providing rental assistance. It's a fairly small portion of the total rental allocation that we have, but it is very targeted. Thank you, Ray. It's very targeted at folks who are the most vulnerable in our communities, who are low and very low income. And actually, I'm going to let Mr. Ray Rodriguez take over talking about the programs. Thank you.
Morning, everybody, and thank you, Pat. So as Pat had mentioned, the Rapid Rehousing and Permanent Supportive Housing Program is targeted at our low and very low vulnerable renters, households, to prevent homelessness. This program would provide rental assistance and wraparound service to those individuals. Here we'll go through some of the numbers. We are pleased to announce that we've actually moved everyone that was still remaining in the hotels from FEMA's TSA program. Everyone has been moved out of the hotels now. I think in the last report they had 7 households that were still in there. So we're happy to report that everybody has moved out of there. To date, we have 105 that are currently in the housing search process in rapid rehousing. 222 households have found rental units so far. And something that we've been working on here lately is we're working directly with Department of Health and Disaster Case Management to start up an initiative similar to what we did with the depopulation of the TSA population. So what we're doing is we're going to start having housing fairs to work with the MHU population of renters to make sure that the February 2018 deadline that's fastly approaching does not become, an immediate cutoff with people looking for somewhere to go. So those conversations have started already. We're working directly with FEMA and with these other organizations to ensure that we really try to address that before the deadline. So with that said, we were also talking about the possibility of using those MHUs to be repurposed over to Texas. So we're working on that now.
Okay.
Okay, lastly, this is just showing that when we're going through the rapid rehousing that those participants are being vetted to make sure to see if they have any PSH, permanent supportive housing needs, if they're vulnerable. Also, LHA is still pursuing an expansion of project-based vouchers statewide, which will allow households to move from rapid rehousing into a bridge into the project-based voucher units, which don't have a time limit. And that would be effective January of 2018. And so far, 51 households are currently receiving these services. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.
Any questions for Ray?
Any questions? Anyone?
Okay. It's important to note that the rental assistance in these programs is not just rental assistance. It involves as well wraparound services, as Ray said, to help folks who have other challenges with their recovery, health issues, mental health issues. Why don't I switch seats with you so you can have the whole thing? Okay. She's going to come. I'll be here.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Lasante Davenport with the Office of Community Development. We're going to talk about the Restore Louisiana Small Business Loan Program. The loan program is for small businesses who has 1 to 50 employees, and were located in one of the affected parishes. The total program budget is $51.2 million, and the business should also have experienced a physical or financial loss. We have some updates to the program that were recently implemented due to a meeting that we had with the Louisiana Bankers Association. The loan award was previously $20,000 to $50,000. Now we have changed that award range to $10,000 up to $150,000. And then that is also in response to the applications that we have received, where we had a number of exceptions requests for up to the $150,000, and then also some did not meet that minimum $20,000. So we wanted to lower it to allow those applicants to receive funding from the program. Also, other adjustments were made to streamline the underwriting of the program. Those business owners who has a credit score of above or 700 or above now can go through the process a little bit faster. The lenders will not underwrite any further than obtaining the credit score for those with 700 or above. We also instituted a deadline for the program, or to receive applications for the program, to October 31st. And that is due to some of the outreach measures that have been taken since August. We have put out some Facebook ads. Also, we've done some Twitter, Google ads, and different other outreach methods, such as contacting the Chamber of Commerce, Louisiana Business Emergency Operations, and things of that nature. So that has started since August, and we've received more inquiries, over 1,000 inquiries regarding the program. So we wanted to allow some time for those businesses to apply to the program, because before we had set a date of September 30th to reevaluate the program. But since those measures have now taken place and we've received increased number of inquiries, we wanted to extend that time to allow more businesses to come on board. So far, we have 105 completed applications and 9 approved loans. We do anticipate our lenders to set closing dates for those loans that were approved within the next 2 weeks. So we will start to see funding go out to those businesses that have been approved. We also had a small business survey that went out to businesses that were on the SBA database that were either approved, denied, or withdrawn, or they just were referred by FEMA. That business survey ended September 5th, and we had around 856 respondents. And we learned through that 80% of those respondents indicated that they were in need of financial assistance. So again, we know this program is needed, and that businesses out there are still looking for capital to help their business sustain or recover from the floods. I've already described the outreach efforts that were taken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question?
Just could you touch on the data that we had in the housing program? Also talked about the amount of funding per applicant. Can you kind of go over some of the numbers of obligated funds from the applications that have been received? What's the average size of loan for the 105 that have been completed applications? How much they're requesting? Kind of where you
So
see
on
those
average, I think we determined that it was around $46,000 on an average. Again, we have seen those that come in at 150, 100, talking about those that have submitted an exception request. And we those are the ones that for the approved. We have seen some in underwriting where we did our duplication of benefits, and so there are some that are above the $50,000 and in between that 50 and 150. So we have to take a deeper look at that, but right now the average is around 46,000.
Hey, Rookdale?
The $150,000 increase or maximum award amount has to be approved by HUD. So we've submitted an action plan amendment as of yesterday to HUD to increase that award amount to $150,000. Our lenders are already aware of that, and as soon as we get that approval from HUD, we will institute that $150,000 without having to do an exceptions request. Because right now, we can award $150,000, but the lenders have to go through an exceptions request process where OCD has to approve it. But that step will be taken away once the action plan amendment is approved, which is 5 days from now, because it's non-substantial.
Thank you, Ms. Davenport. Just for point of clarity, since it came up earlier, does the duplication of benefits as it relates to an SBA loan have any effect on whether or not a business would be able to qualify for these additional funds?
It does if the business does not have enough unmet need. Then it will affect them where if they don't have anything left over after we do our check, then they will not
so
be
just
able to
another
go.
reason that we need Congress to act on this SBA duplication of benefit. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from the panel? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Davenport.
We have the Louisiana Farm Recovery Grant Program. It's a $10 million program where it's going to provide grant assistance to farmers to help them in their long-term recovery from the floods of 2016. Eligible applicants are farmers who experience crop or livestock losses either in March or August floods. The Department of Agriculture has conducted outreach meetings from July until August, and they have had over 1,000 applications submitted. They are in the process of extending their timeline to review those applications because that was a double in the expected amount of applications that they were expecting to receive. So it will take a little bit more time for them to vet through those applications and determine the award amounts for each eligible farmer. The program award cap is $100,000, and LAFA is going to provide awards on a pro rata basis. And like I said, once they go through all of those applications, they are then going to determine how much those farmers will receive, because all will be funded or awarded a grant. And again, the timeline was where the first awards would go out in January, but because of that great large amount of applications that they received, that may be extended out. So we will definitely have an update for the next meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Forbes?
It's a test, Pat.
So, the infrastructure program is next, and as you know, the governor has been asking for $600 million for enhanced infrastructure projects, things like the Comeet River diversion and other. We know that in every area of the state there is assistance necessary to try to reduce the impacts of similar flood events in the future. And we have had very little funding to be able to allocate any to that, but we do have $105 million at this point allocated to pay for the FEMA Public Assistance Cost Share. And the objective is to make sure that the governments who are doing this work, response, recovery, the everyday business of running a town or a parish or a fire department, have the money that they need to continue to do that, and these match amounts for some of these local jurisdictions was going to be very difficult for them to deal with. So this helps every single public assistance applicant with the match portion so that they don't have to come up with it out of the general fund. Eligible applicants are basically anybody who is eligible for FEMA public assistance, state agencies, local governments, agencies, and nonprofit organizations. We are awaiting, oh, sure.
Question, Mr. Forbes. Going back to the $105 million for, which is public assistance. I know that the Louisiana Municipal Association, I think, conducted a presentation to communities, municipalities on how to, I guess, document the requested numbers to actually ask for public reimbursement, public assistance reimbursement. And I think that was held either earlier this month or at the last part of August. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir. I know that LMA was participating in that, and that we, as this slide shows, OCD has been conducting meetings, 3 different meetings around the state for every single eligible applicant to come in and understand the differences between requirements for public assistance and requirements for this community development block grant funds. Because sadly, despite our repeated efforts to get HUD and FEMA to figure out how we could do this more easily, it has not been that fruitful. So consequently, we're following 2 different sets of regulatory requirements as we do this, but we're figuring out how to do that with as little impact on the local governments as possible. To that point, we had those meetings for those jurisdictions that we know deal with CDBG money all the time. We didn't require that they come, but for those agencies, nonprofits, local governments maybe that don't generally deal with CDBG funds, we required them to come to the meetings as a matter of being eligible for the funding. We continue to do outreach, we continue to do training on the differences in the program. First and foremost is a requirement of following the Davis-Bacon and related labor acts. CDBG funds, we have to do that. We don't have to do it with PA. So all the people who are used to spending public assistance are used to not having to comply with Davis-Bacon. We're getting to those agencies, school districts first and foremost. We know that a lot of school districts were heavily impacted, to make sure they know the rules as they go out and hire architects and engineers and contractors to rebuild their schools. But we will continue to reach out to everybody to make sure they're informed of that. To that point, we're still waiting on some guidance from U.S. Department of Labor that may be able to give us some relief from this. But in the meantime, we're being extra cautious. We don't want anybody to wind up unable to access our funds by virtue of not having followed some rule that we were supposed to.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Well, I'm just, from the standpoint of the city of Denham Springs, and what little contact I have with the administration, I understand that it is a very burdensome task for the local community to compile all of the figures and the numbers that are necessary. I understand from being mayor for 12 years that you have to compile a certain amount of numbers, but is it something that OCD and is working on with the communities across the state of Louisiana that has this, to see if they can better understand what they have to compile? Because I think there is a misunderstanding of what has to be compiled from what little information I have.
Yes, so that was the point of the training. I will say equally important is that GOSEP and OCD are working very closely together to make sure that we streamline use of each other's data so that we don't have to collect things twice from
Right.
these municipalities and things like that. Nonetheless, there's still, the primary difference with CDBG funds is Davis-Bacon, and it is a bit of a paperwork headache, but as long as the architect, engineer, and the contractor all know that that's in place up front, we can generally avoid issues with Davis-Bacon. When we don't get there first is when the issue arises.
So if there is other questions to be asked of how to compile these numbers, who is the contact person in OCD for a community to present these questions to?
Ms. Kay Schultz is the infrastructure manager at OCD, and I can get her email address and...
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Kay Schultz?
Kay Sage. I'm
Sage.
sorry.
Kay Sage.
Sage, yes.
All right. Okay, thank you.
She's married now.
Okay.
Few numbers on, to your point, Mr. Durbin, you can see here that we're projecting nearly 2,200 project worksheets through the FEMA Public Assistance System. Only 1,536 have been approved by FEMA so far. So our money is still basically an estimate based on FEMA's estimates. We have fluctuated a little bit between whether 105 was going to be more than we needed or not enough, and we still are, don't quite know the answer to that, but we will get a better handle as more of these project worksheets are completed and approved. And that is our last slide for the presentation. If you want me to talk through these some?
I was going to ask a question
Sure.
unless you want to talk through.
Sure. Yep.
I'm reading it right there. The listed amount on this slide, 101 million, for example, that's the match estimate that this program would be covering if all PA applications that are in process were approved.
Projected.
Projected, thank you. There's an approved volume of 66 million. We've got processed through 15.9 million. So is that right? There's kind of a $50 million delta between that, what's been processed and what FEMA has approved but has not gotten through the OCD process yet?
Yeah, but I should have made this clear. The process for reimbursing this match is going to be done after closeout of the project worksheet. We've informed all the local governments and eligible entities of that, but if you're familiar at all with how the PA works, the number on the project worksheet is constantly changing until they finish the construction and close out the project. And so we would be constantly changing our grant amount to each entity if we didn't wait till closeout. So the 26 million was something we could do for closed out projects that were already closed out. And the 15 million, the 26 approved applications. But the vast majority of these are going to, take a while to close out, and then we'll provide the funds as soon after they close out as possible.
Thank you. That helps.
Oh, Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ford, I'm going to go back to the homeowners program and ask
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. The slide with the key updates.
Slide, I'm sorry?
The slide with the key updates under the homeowner program. What you went through?
Fourth slide.
Key update, slide 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the bullet number 2, the large one. There were 28,000 environmental reviews, and 12,000 of those were invited to do the application. Does that mean that the others were not invited?
Not yet. Because of the phasing approach, we've only invited, as of yesterday, everyone in phases 1, 2, and 3
Okay.
who applied, who finished their survey by, I think it's July 21st.
Okay.
So we're progressing through those phases and inviting people. And the challenge, of course, is balancing workload with the number of people in the queue. We don't want to run out of work, obviously. We want to get to everybody as quickly as we can. We don't want to overload the system and make people wait overly long between their application and inspection and then actually getting the grant funds.
What is the average wait?
I'm sorry, the average wait for...
Between those two timeframes?
Between application and construction right now, it's probably a month and a half. It's too long, really. We are still in the process of getting all the systems going at full speed, and until we get there, we're not going to be able to even give people, when we invite them, an idea of what that timeline looks like. But we are working to get to that immediately. Our goal is that the process between application and then inspection and closing and construction is no more than a month.
Really? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I like that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Oh, Mayor Tyler,
No,
again?
no, I'm good. Thank you. I'm finished.
I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
Okay.
Pat, I know on the neighborhood landlord program, it's up to 7 units. And then on the multifamily loan program, it's 20 and above. So for that gap of 8 units to 19 units, is there a program in place for those individuals? And if not, are we tracking to see how many of those folks are getting, falling without the help? And
There isn't
Mr.
a
Rodriguez.
program. We don't have a program for between 8 and 20, and I'll explain some of the federal regulatory reasons for that. When we go from 7 to 8 units, it triggers the requirement of Davis-Bacon and related acts for that project. That automatically almost kicks the money, the economic picture of developing that just doesn't work anymore because you have this added cost, added paperwork. And then to do the type of project with the underwriting and the pro forma work and all that the developers have to do, it doesn't make much sense from a cost per unit basis to do it for less than 20. So unfortunately, we don't have anything. I'll ask Mr. Rodriguez if there's anything else at LHC that might be available.
No, and thank you, Pat. No, currently there is nothing that would address that population. And I can say, you'd asked if there was any numbers or any record that's been being kept, and I can say that personally, I've only heard from, I think maybe 2 individuals who've actually inquired about something that would fall in between the 2 programs.
But there's nothing to preclude someone that, let's say, has 10 units to say, well, I'm going to repair 7 of them under the neighborhood landlord?
That actually would not be eligible. So if
Okay.
it's a 10-unit structure, if it's all under one roof, then that property would not be eligible for the program. The program limits at a 7-unit structure. So anything beyond that 8-unit structure would not be eligible. So anything 7 and below.
I would just ask that we do kind of keep track of the numbers that are falling through the cracks there, so that if in fact there's some solution going forward,
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We can keep a record of, as we've been getting calls and as we spoke to individuals, we're keeping record of, any folks that call that are not currently eligible, we keep a record of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Knapp?
Just wanted to ask, this is back to the homeowner program. I apologize for missing the August meeting, but looking back through the minutes, if I was reading the minutes correctly, we were at 543 households and 16 million in approved funds in the minutes that were reported last month. And if I'm looking at the report today, we're at 600 homeowners, and just shy of 18 million dispersed. How much? So it seems like it's actually been relatively slow in the last month. For, that delta between the last meeting and this meeting is pretty small. It seemed like it had actually been accelerating up to that point. How much of that is Harvey or other effects, or is it other internal issues?
There are several pieces at play there. For one thing, you're right. We had a good ramp up. We recognize that we more or less hit a plateau there. And we are looking at ways to adapt, and we've been in the process of changing our systems, changing some processes. We're talking with HUD about alternative approaches to inspections. Harvey and Irma have depleted the qualified inspection corps by almost half. And we expect that to continue to be a problem. We're adapting to it through numerous different ways. The contractors are changing some of the compensation structures for them. We're allowing overtime because they have the opportunity to go make a whole bunch of money in Texas by sleeping in their car and working 100 hours a week. So we've got to give them the opportunities to make similar kind of money here. But we're also looking at training of inspectors and things like that. In addition, there are a few other pieces. I mean, in the last meeting, we added the group of people who are eligible. We've got to make some process adjustments within our own processes to adapt to bringing those folks in. But your observation is accurate. We've ramped up to what was a decent speed, but not fast enough to get us through everybody in a year, which is what we've got to do, right? So we're just continuing to tweak the system now, and some of those tweaks might set us back a week on some production as we implement something new that's going to ultimately speed the program up.
Anybody? Mayor Robideau?
I realize I may be reaching my quota here, but I apologize. Just going back to the 7 units in the Davis-Bacon, I think it would probably behoove the state to also make that request while we're asking for the duplication of benefits, to make a similar request that Congress look at, especially in light of Harvey and Irma, because they're going to be in the same situation, that for disaster-related, at least the disaster-related piece, that Davis-Bacon somehow has changed to where maybe you can go up to the 20 units as opposed to limiting it to just the 7. And then the last thing that I have is on slide 4, Pat, when you were going through the process of the survey and the application, the last piece of that is the reimbursement/repair. And one of the options for homeowners is to use our contractors, the program's contractors. I guess the question is, considering the 2 other disasters that are currently out there, are our contractors in any way locked down, for lack of a better word, through the contract with the state to where they're going to be available for the homeowners that are using them, as opposed to, bouncing between these disasters and
Yes.
being hit or miss?
This is a great question. We have certainly met with our contractor, IAM, with their construction subcontractors. They're eager to do the work here. They are committed to it. They acknowledge that they may lose some staff, but we've talked with Associated General Contractors Board, several different agencies, and Stein Lumber, Home Depot, and for the most part, there is still not an expectation of huge outflow of skilled labor and materials that's going to impact us. And our contractors have made it very clear to us that they're committed to the work. So at this point, that I won't say that it won't become an issue. I don't think we know completely how big Harvey and Irma and now Maria are going to wind up being. But at this point, we look to be somewhat insulated from that. One thing that the folks in Texas, the Associated General Contractors in Texas said was, Texas is a huge state and a small portion of it was impacted, and there are contractors coming in from all over Texas, and certainly they'd rather have contractors and their labor crews from their own state. So at this point, that doesn't look like a huge impact, but we're certainly keeping our eye on it.
Good, I appreciate that. And then I would say this is much a future comment as it relates to whatever contracts we sign, though. Going forward, we may want to consider having some language in our contracts where there is some punitive clause, in the event that there's some multiple disasters. I mean, I don't think any of us contemplated that there's going to be 3 and possibly 4 disasters really within a 16-month period that's that would cause this kind of concern, but it may not be a bad idea going
We
forward.
actually have that language in our contract right now.
Okay.
Once a home gets assigned to a contractor, he's got a maximum of 120 days
Oh,
to
good.
finish it, and if they don't finish it in that period, we have penalties.
Good information for the public to hear. Thank you.
Questions? Questions? Is that your presentation, Mr. Farmer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to have these folks here? Okay. I would like to invite to come up President Guy Cormier, St. Martin Parish Government. President Cormier.
Just me, man. Okay. I got money too. Thank you so much for having us here today. Mayor Durbin, thank you so much for bringing this meeting to Acadiana. And on behalf of myself and the folks that make up Acadiana, welcome not only to Abbeville, Vermilion Parish, but to Acadiana. I would normally apologize for my dress down today because I'm in a room full of three-piece suits and nice dresses, but I paid $10 to wear this today. We have this initiative at our office where we give a $10 donation to dress down. That money goes to the American Cancer Society. And I thought twice about doing that, but then I was coming to Vermilion Parish, and boots and jeans are just as important as three-piece suits here, so I'm just going to fit right in. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for at least listening to our small summary of where we are as far as the Acadian Planning Commission goes in this watershed initiative that we started. I want to just thank you, not only you guys, but the governor. I've been in office 18 years. My government service has been 18 years, so I've lived through Hurricane Lily, Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, Isaac, and the great floods of 2016. And although I know there's some residents who are frustrated with the amount of time it takes to get reimbursed or even projects to get started, this is the most organized effort I've ever seen as far as recovery goes. And the outreach has been amazing, that you consistently meet on a monthly basis and you spread that around. We don't have to go to Baton Rouge to do that. So thank you for doing that, and we appreciate you being here. Our effort started just with a group of guys and gals who decided that we as a region looked at this flood from a regional perspective, not just from a parish by parish perspective. And we gave you a presentation, I think sometime last year in Youngsville, in the infant stages of where we were, and we've come a long way since then. We have put together an organization, or use an organization called Acadiana Planning Commission, which is made up of 7 affected parishes, but we've even included a parish that's not in our region, who was not affected in the August floods of last year, to be partners with us on this initiative to deal with watersheds throughout the Acadiana area. We figured that it was easier for us to get together to do projects that would fix a region more so than us pulling the wagon in different directions. And I'll give you an example. Mayor Terrio stood up here earlier today and said that they're working on a coulee in his area from a maintenance perspective and trying to get that stuff done so that in the event that we get another flood to happen, that water could be carried to a bigger watershed. And in my parish, for instance, my voters went to the polls in December of last year and rededicated the tax to give some $25 million worth of drainage work to just my parish. This organization that you all represent and the state has dedicated $25 million for us as a region to study where we can possibly do some damage control and mitigation as far as the next storm coming, because we know it's going to happen. And I'm here to say that what makes us a little different than the rest of the state is that we are all working together to get that done. Not only the 8 parishes that we have represented, we also have 8 other local entities that are working with us. I think what makes us unique, we have 5 state agencies who have continuously come to our meetings and participated in what we're trying to do. And we have 8 federal agencies as well that are coming to our meetings and trying to assist us and trying to get a fix for this particular area, dealing at least relative to drainage. More than that, we have 3 nonprofits who have also taken an interest in what we're doing. So because of that, regional perspective, I think people are recognizing that this is probably the way to fix problems moving forward. And we've had a lot of traction in the last couple of months since the governor has made the announcement of the 25 million. We continue to do meetings on a monthly basis with our commission, but we have specific watershed meetings that we set up about every other month to get public participation in it as well, and those have gone along very well. Ms. Boulay is with me today, and I'll maybe give her an opportunity to give you a timeline of where we stand. We're just starting to put a timeline together. Timelines are not a good word in government, but we figured we needed something, because I know just in my everyday job, when somebody calls about a drainage ditch or a road to be fixed, they want to know when it's going to get done. And that target always moves because of what we do on a daily basis. But at any rate, I just wanted to invite Ms. Monique Boulay, who's our Executive Director for Acadiana Planning Commission, to kind of give you a synopsis of what we're doing and kind of timeline behind it.
Thank you, Ms. Boulay.
Sure, thank you. So the timeline is not, it really is preliminary. I don't have it in front of me. But really what we're trying to do is affect the way we make decisions. And that's a big ask, to bring more science to it and to bring more knowledge. And so in that, I guess we have a couple of phases. The first phase is putting more gauges and collecting more data in our watersheds. Acadiana, when you look at the map and you look at all the different gauges that USGS and the different agencies have out there, and the data that's pulling out of the Vermilion, the Teche, and the Mermentau, and those are the three basins we're really focused on, there's very little data. Some states have really mastered data collection and made it accessible. And from a watershed perspective, Louisiana should be there, and we're not. So we are looking at a gauge, I guess, deployment. We're working with the University of Louisiana and their hydrologists to put some recommendations together. We're going to go local with that. Our first meeting is next week in Ville Platte, where we meet there with all of the relative people who make drainage decisions, from public works to the consultants to the local government officials, and get their feedback. Where are your problem issues? Where are your nuisance flooding areas? And how do we factor that in? And look at the recommendations the universities come up with, and does that work from the working knowledge you have on the ground? And so we really do plan to get input all the way up. We're also working with USGS and the other agencies that do have gauges out there, so that what we do is coordinated with what they do, and from a funding perspective, we're not duplicating anything, and we're leveraging all the way from the local to the federal levels, the efforts there, creating a data system with hopefully a web interface that can have some positive effects in the response time as well. So it's not just the recovery. This, in and of itself, once we get to the point of building a model for the region, feeds better data into a model. So then we have a much more effective tool to bring to our local governments as they make each, Guy's got over $20 million to spend in St. Martin Parish, but he doesn't have the science and the hydrology maybe that he could have. So if we build that as a region, he has access to that. So it's whether it's state, federal, or local dollars, our drainage dollars become much more upstream and downstream decisions rather than political jurisdictions. I do have the time frame in front of me now. Thank you, Casey. But I don't want to share it with you because it is still a moving target. And I think we're getting to the point where it's starting to become concrete and we're starting to finalize it. It's probably going to take us 2.5 years to really get to the point where we can, or maybe another year and a half, to do a project call and really set some criteria as a region of how we pick projects and what are the factors we want to consider and agree upon before we make major drainage decisions. And so we'll have set out criteria to run projects through, and this model to run projects through, and hydraulic expertise. So we're making smarter decisions in drainage, hopefully lowering the floodplain. Probably never able to avoid an incident like what happened in August, but if we can lower it by a few inches or a few feet even, you can reduce the impacts tremendously. And so that's where we are, and that's what we're doing. And I really want to thank the leadership in the region. I think it's a very special moment in time because they all get it. from Mayor Robito to Guy to Ronald. Every one of them get it, and they really, it's very easy to put this together under them, so thank you.
Mr. Olivier?
Monique, you're right. Guy, you're right. This is going to happen again. And this process, however long it's going to take, I recall from the very first time that this group was assembled, we started having meetings with the federal authorities. And the one thing that they kept focusing on was resilience. What are you going to do? Let's go beyond the recovery efforts. Let's talk about years from now. What are you doing to the projects that you've got on the table today that are going to need to make the changes to be more resilient? And that's what you're talking about right there. So as you're moving forward, we can't forget, we've got to keep these people informed because they change out. I mean, from year to year to year, they change out. Or either they're going to another catastrophic event like we've seen. But we need to keep them informed as much as possible, so I just ask that you keep that in mind as you're moving forward. If it's going to take the next year and a half, two and a half years, whatever, keep them informed so they know that we're doing those things.
You mean the FEMA?
Yeah.
They have walked, well, you know, they chose the Vermilion watershed to pilot. So they have walked with us. They are still walking with us very closely. I think in the next 2 to 3 weeks, some of them will transition out with the other disasters in the country. But they have actually provided some of the research for us. They are helping in this. They've been a very close partner along with GOSEP, and OCD has been at the table. I mean, our meetings are very impressive, at least they are right now, because we have so many federal, state, and local agencies at the meetings working through some of these issues. Even building up to the summit we had in August, we did these local meetings, and we brought all of those agencies into Ville Platte, into Breaux Bridge, and into New Iberia, and really did interact with those local decision makers. And I say decision makers because it's not just the elected officials, it's not just the public works guys, it's all of the people relative in those decisions we've opened the conversations up to, because we need everybody on the same page. You know, small governments don't have people on staff, they hire consultants. We need the consultants understanding what we're doing and what our goals are and how it fits into their work as well. And so it's been really good so far. I think, you know, FEMA wants us to kind of walk on our own, and I think we will. We can without a problem. But they, many of them have really enjoyed doing this, and probably will personally stay informed along the way. And they also, you know, where they can, we can reach back and probably ask for a little assistance here or there. But they've done a lot of GIS work for us and research. We've asked them to do an ordinance analysis to look at all of our local ordinances in every municipality, and we have 45 in parish, building ordinances, and how they relate to that data they put in the watershed study. You know, what is the difference a 1-foot freeboard makes? What would it have made? And can you see a difference in the impact in the communities that were impacted in the flood? So eventually we get to the build question. How are we building? And how do we put that, how do we educate not only our build community, our builders, but our citizens on what is the best way to build in a water environment? We have a water environment, and we need to make that part of our daily, our consciousness all the time, and think twice before putting something flat on the ground. You know, does it really make sense? And so eventually, I think we get to all of those questions. There's a lot on this little chart here.
Well, it reminds me of the things that we did after the Katrina Rita experience. You know, we turned to the Dutch and Deltares and all of those, because they have gone through this and they've documented all of those things, lessons learned, and that's where we are now, is starting to document.
Right. On Tuesday, we are actually taking a field trip, and we're bringing some of the state and federal agencies with us down to Houma, because after Katrina, they implemented regional building codes. And so we're going to go down there and let Michael Witch, who was instrumental in developing that, and Kevin Belanger, really talk through how that evolved, what the effects are, what are the, you know, I mean, there's challenges to it too. It's not perfect, but, you know, how does that work? You know, it creates consistency from a regional perspective. And and a more regional mindset, I guess, in building and enforcement. And so there are a lot of questions really before we change the complete dynamic, but I think we're on the path. Might be a long
Mr.
way.
Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure, Mr. Question.
In other areas, we've had to do modifications to or temporary set-asides of some of the Scenic Rivers Acts. We have to do it through the state legislature because they really limit our ability to desnag and basically either dredge or deal with a number of those entities if they're in that system. And so I would ask that if that's going to be part of the issue, that we need to be prepared and at the next legislative session deal with that so that we don't get to a point and then find out we can't do anything because it's prohibited under the State Scenic Rivers Act.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Ms. Goulet, what have you been hearing from FEMA about any changes to base flood elevations in your parishes from the event last year?
I don't think they're going to make changes. I think their maps, what we heard locally, and what they interpreted, their maps were spot on. So I have not heard that they're going to make changes.
I want to comment to that. In my parish, Mr. Knapp, we got our maps, I guess, in 2012, and at first blush, I wanted to maybe protest those maps because of the 500-year floodplain, and thought about doing that. And there's a process you can follow, but you have to hire your own engineering firm. It's going to cost the parish taxpayers about $250,000, which I didn't have to do. But we went ahead and just rolled with it. And I did receive a few calls from people who were now put in a flood zone that were never in a flood zone before. When this event happened, which depending upon what meteorologist you talk to, some will say 500 years, some 1,000 years. This thing was almost within 5 feet, 6 feet in some areas where they said the 500-year flood was going to come up to. Because I knew that because my brother-in-law owns a helicopter service, so I got to survey the damage a few times a day throughout the event, and we got a lot of backwater flooding during the event. And so every time we'd go up, I know all my local roads because I've been in the office for a while. I would mark off where the water was and where it got to its highest point, and it was spot on.
Wow.
And if you overlaid the FEMA map on top of the map that I had made, it was almost identical. And I thank myself for not spending $250,000 of taxpayer money because I would have been wrong. Now it may be different in other parishes, but in my parish it was unbelievable. With this LiDAR data, it's hard to knock it. So,
Monique, another question. We are putting a lot of resources into this water institute that we have in our state. And so how are you engaging them in this process with all your needs for mapping and GIS and all of it?
So I have met with them a few times, and Dr. Maselli came to one of our meetings a week or two ago. Right now we don't have any. We're not expending any extra funds, I guess. But from an advisory perspective, they're definitely, and that's kind of where I have all of the hydraulic people right now, just really kind of informing us. I see them going forward in some kind of role like that. There's a lot of questions. If we put a model together, how we put a model together, one of the questions is 2D or 3D. There's some pushing that we need to go all the way to 3D, and then there's some philosophy. We're really just trying to inform the decision-making process better, and do we need, is 2D sufficient? And there's a lot of questions out there right now, I think, and that's what we're working through, really trying to get our footing on that and understand that. Dr. Maselli is always very helpful and part of this conversation, certainly.
Question? Anybody? Okay.
just in closing, I just want to thank the leadership from Acadiana, and I'm going to steal a comment that President Robideau said that stuck to me. When we made a decision that we were going to do this based on a region, we got together as a group and with 7 parish presidents in a room, we said, okay, how do we move forward? Because the state is looking to probably disperse some monies our way. And it didn't take very long because we had been having this regional discussion already, that President Robideau said, well, I think it just makes sense that we do this from a regional perspective. If anybody else has an idea why we shouldn't, bring it forward. And the room got silent, and then we all agreed that it would happen. But he made a comment and this is the first time I had heard this, but it's spot on. Politically, we probably could have all just taken our little pots of money and go take care of our little areas that we needed to. And that would have probably been the politically right thing to do for us, but it wasn't the right thing to do for Acadiana. And I feel that because we came together and we said we're going to take this $25 million, and hopefully you can give us more once we show you how we spend this one, that it's the right thing to do for Acadiana. So I just want to thank the leadership, because the initial meeting was called by me. I just reached out and said, let's see what happens. Where I thought I was going to have 20 people in a room, I had 85 people in a room. And it's just been, we've gotten traction, a lot of traction since then, but it didn't happen with just me or with Monique. It has happened because we all decided to go in this together. So just wanted to thank you for that. And this should be probably a lesson for the rest of the state to try to just get along. Even state government, just try to get along and get some solutions done.
We applaud your efforts. Thank you. Okay, moving into the public comment period. We have the cards. Public comment period is declared open at this time, and I will invite to come forward to the mic Ms. Janice McCumber. Ms. McCumber is a flooded landowner. She lives in Abbeville.
Yes, and like the other gentleman, I'm not dressed because I just came from the marsh in my camp. So
Okay.
excuse my, I thought, any rate, I am a widow. I was flooded and with no insurance because, again, we were in one of those areas that never, 200 years or whatever, the 1,000-year flood never happened, so I had no insurance. When it did come to my home, I worked alongside and got as much done as I could, being a laborer with the contractors and et cetera. Then in April, when we heard about Restore Louisiana, I applied immediately. Crossed the T's, dotted the I's. Since April, probably made about 15 phone calls to make sure everything was on target, because you all, we had heard that we had money available to us. I completed my home. I'm not saying I just put Band-Aids on it, but again, when you do just as much to make it livable again, I had to spend, not having insurance, had to spend a good bit of my own money and take out a loan. And then, heard possibly there were funds available, people like me, fixed income, retired, 17-year-old. And there are a lot of my neighbors in the same situation as me. There were more, though, that had insurance that covered way over their costs. I wonder, how many homeowners are here today? All right, 3 of us. I know you all talk about people trying to do, I've tried to talk to many of my friends to apply for Restore, do the survey. Can't get them because, I can tell you this, as you well know, not that I'm saying it's red tape, but I mean, I'm wondering, like, I'm glad you brought that up, how long does it take? And then we get that email about y'all extending the reimbursements, and I can appreciate that. But for somebody like me, and yes, I had there was the person that took the pictures from the outside, there was the person that came in and did the lead assessment, and there was a person that did basically what FEMA did, make sure I still had 2,600 square feet, and that I still had 13 inches of water in one place and 18 in another, and did all that, spent 2 hours at my home. So I've gone through the whole process. And every time I call, it's under review. Okay, and then this new email about the going forward on the reimbursements because frankly, I did not have enough money to change my doors, the windows, and some things that need to be done, but requires funding. So my question always was, well, how can I move forward when I've already borrowed money before if I don't get reimbursed to move forward? And maybe I'm speaking for several of my neighbors who couldn't come today, who asked me to ask the same questions. You know, how long does it take to get reimbursed? And you all keep at, and I think people don't want to fool with this because of whatever experience they had with FEMA before, but I can't get them to do the survey. And you can say there's a lot of people that hadn't done the survey.
Right.
I mean, I've been waiting an hour and a half to talk. You know, I thought we were going to be the first ones, but I'm glad I listened to the rest of it because I can see where every entity needs money. So I wonder, how long is it going to take if you've gone, and I'm in phase 1, and the 600 people who got 18 million, that's like 30,000, if you average it, by 30,000 a person. I'm not even asking for that. And so
So, Ms. McCumber, let me ask,
Yeah,
let me
please
just
help
ask,
me.
let me just try to clear up a few
I just
things
don't
because
understand
I'm
the timeframe.
trying to fit things between
Yes.
what you're saying and is I understand you did complete the survey. You've had a visit that came out and measured your premises after the survey.
Did the lead paint thing?
And have you since completed been invited to complete the application? Have you received an invitation to complete the application?
Obviously
I
not.
see heads shaking in the back that you have. Maybe we,
when I call, I ask them, I said, where am I? And they say I'm under review.
okay.
So I'm pretty sure I've completed everything.
Okay, and you're asking for reimbursement, not construction work?
Well, I didn't find, let me just say this, I'm not good on the computer, so when
That's okay.
I did my thing over the phone.
Okay,
So when the last guy who was measuring my house said, are you under solution 1 or solution 2? And I'm saying, what you talking about?
I see.
And I said, he said this, that you, because he saw my doors weren't replaced, my windows were rotten, whatever. I said, well, I didn't even have the money, I did what I could
okay,
initially to get back in my house.
right.
I'm asking, I thought the first initial thing was just in reimbursement for expenses,
Yeah,
and there was money available
okay.
for people like me.
Well, there are the CEO of the contracting firm that got the state award is sitting right behind you in the white jacket.
Hello there.
And she can she can help you a little bit later. We're going to invite somebody else to come up, but we've heard your question.
Well, I'm not finished.
Where are you? Oh, go ahead. Let's go.
Far from finished.
I got you. All right.
Okay. So my thing is, the longer this takes, and the administrative costs to hire the people that you all talk, you know, the ones that the 3 different guys that came to my house. As this process goes on, does the money that we're asking for get depleted? That we're first, okay.
No.
Okay, that's great to hear. And you already answered about the Texas and Florida disasters.
Okay.
Will it affect our grants? You said no on that, that's good. Is the Corps of Engineers in the building? Are they represented here at all?
We don't have anything to do with the Corps of Engineers. That's
But the whole state of
totally separate.
Louisiana has
Correct.
a lot to do with
But
the
this is
Corps of
different.
Engineers.
This is totally different.
Because you see, I live on a corner where the state road,
You have-
ditches are full. The drainage coulee has a drainage board, and then the police car is in charge of the front of our yard.
We have nothing to do with any of
But you
that.
can imagine the frustration.
Sure.
And you wonder why people don't apply for these.
We understand.
things.
Thank you. You
Okay.
brought up some
Now,
great points and questions. I hope to have
Because
those.
the buyer even needs to work too. So
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
like, the coordinator engineers needs to be at these meetings
Just hang around a little bit longer. Okay, thank you.
and speak to who?
Well, they kind of know who you are. They're raising their hands right now. Okay.
You're a target.
Thank you, Ms. McCumber. We appreciate you coming up. Thank you. Okay. Okay, the next individual that has filled out a green card is Linda Mouton. Ms. Mouton? Linda Mouton. Oh, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Mouton lives in Maurice, Louisiana.
Mayor Terrio made you famous.
Ms. Mouton, just pull that mic close to you and welcome to come forward. Thank you. And you got a fine gentleman sitting next to you.
I really appreciate him. He's been a great help.
Pull it a little bit closer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. Yes, I'm one of those that got flooded, lost everything. Filled out the application, told I'm in phase 1. I'm at the point where I'm just tired of waiting. Medical conditions, I don't want to go into all that, but I've been working with Upbring. I don't know, sure you're familiar with Upbring, along with the mayor, that put me through different organizations that helped. Right now, in my home, I have materials. I have wood. We did all the de-gut and the demolding, everything, but I'm afraid that, because when you walk in, you could smell mold growing. So that wood would be wasted, like I said, I'm in phase 1, and I don't know.
So you're interested in to find out where you stand and when can you see
how much longer,
Okay.
like the other ladies say, And I started not to come to actually I was going to store in Maurice, and then I said, well, why not go? Maybe you'll get your answer.
Okay. Mayor Terrio, I know you're very familiar with this lady's issues. Has she completed the application? Has she been invited to complete the application? Or maybe you can answer that. The survey and then the application. After the environmental review, has anybody visited you to perform an environment? Maybe she's not familiar with the terminology.
I don't think, no, not the environment.
Okay, but the survey has been completed.
The survey.
And you are the homeowner of the property?
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that you well qualify with your income, low income bracket, right?
Right.
Okay.
And sometimes I could kick myself for that. I'm not gonna go through all that. I'm not.
All right. Has she visited with the ladies out front that has the computers available to find out and see where she is in the process?
I've been to restore.gov on
Okay.
South Park
Restore is here today.
Yeah.
They're outside in the hallway.
And they showed me in review.
I'm not sure.
My case is in review.
You're in review, that means you completed the application.
So she has completed the application pass? Okay. Do you know when you completed the application? Can you recall?
No.
This month, September? Okay.
About 2 months.
All right.
About 2 months.
Mayor Terrio, I would highly advise you to help your constituent to step in the hallway and see if they can pull up on the computer they're tied in and to see where that is, because we all at this table would like to know where she is in the process, since we believe she has completed the application form. Do you have anything else to share on that?
No, we've worked with not only her, but a couple of other ones, and we're working at the gentleman's in the back, Catholic Services, Mr. Crayer and stuff.
Gotcha.
They've been tremendous, and I guess the frustration is the amount of time.
Sure. We all.
And they're out of their homes. She just wants to get back. She don't want a mansion. She wants to have what she had before.
Exactly.
Well, we recognize the time that has gone by. It completely is boggling my mind as it is. Here we are a year later, over a year later from the floods. I heard Mr. Forbes present just a minute ago saying that from the application, you got it?
Technology challenge.
I've been there before. From the application, completion of the application form to having a visit with the contractor is somewhere in the neighborhood of a month and a half following the application. Could be a little bit longer. They're hoping to cut that time frame down to a month. That's why I asked the question a minute ago. Do you recall when did you complete the application? The only person that can answer that is a person on the computer out there. And we would welcome that information here on this panel. Okay? We appreciate you coming.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Appreciate it. Okay. Tony Crater. Mr. Crater? Catholic Charity of Acadiana, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yes,
Mr.
part of the
Crater.
Diocese of Lafayette.
Yes, sir.
And for some of the people here, I don't want to confuse them, I changed hats. I used to be with another organization for 40 years in disaster response, but I had retired and came back to help with the flood. One of the questions that I have is, number one, a lot of the NGOs and faith-based organizations have been working with some of the individuals since day one and trying to get them back into a living mode. Which, if you look at what we've done so far, we're probably in the range of anywhere from $7 to $10 million worth of in-kind and donations and what have you. In working with Restore, one of the questions I need to really get clarification on, because we've gotten several different answers on it. As we're working with these individuals, if they start qualifying through doing the survey, through the application, through starting the contract, I've not heard from the application to starting the contract about a month and a half. I'd like to know also how long from basically the survey time through the application process. Because we've been told that in between there, somewhere in there, if the individual is doing work on their home, they have to stop. And that's kind of what we need clarification. I try to keep up with most of the meetings. I don't make them, but I watch them, the ones that are streamed, and I read the notices that come out. But Catholic Charities is also part of the Acadiana Long-Term Recovery Committee that's going on, which we actually chair. So, like I said, that's a major question right now. Because if it's a period of time that there's a delay in there, and as Ms. Mouton said, we have materials that sometimes on site, and we use a lot of volunteer labor, so it comes on weekends and when the groups are available and that to do the work. But it would really help if we had clear definition of when the work would have to stop if Restore is going to do their evaluations and what have you.
We're going to get that answer for you in just a second from the executive director, but do you have any other questions?
No, sir, that's it. I just want to thank you all for the work that y'all are doing, and I want to echo what President Cormier said, that I've been in this for 40 years. I have worked all the major disasters here, worked with a lot of different state and federal programs, and I do really like the way this one is rolling. It's rolling a lot faster than any of the others I have, but there's still a delay. We just, we're trying to work around that delay.
Mr. Forbes, Mr. Crater has that one question, if you can help him with the time frame.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for asking the question, because this is an extremely important thing. Nobody wants anybody to quit working, which is the whole reason we did the environmental reviews ahead of time. And so even once you've applied, you can continue to work. Survey, keep working. Put in your application, keep working. Whenever we may ask you to stop is when we come out and do the inspection and decide you finished 50% of your work and there's 50% yet to do. We're still refining that as more people come in and we gauge the amount of time between inspection and closing. So we're figuring out that piece, but until you get an inspection, keep working, keep doing your work. We have questions into HUD right now about making sure that we can maximize that amount of time.
Mr. Crater, this is the Executive Director of the Office of Community Development. He's the head guy.
Right.
In Baton Rouge, Mr. Pat Forbes, so you can take his word.
Yeah, I'm
Okay?
familiar. There was one other question, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I forgot. Is there any reimbursement phase of it? We have a number of small faith-based organizations, even some nonprofits, that, is putting basically everything they have into helping these individuals get back. And I'm speaking for Acadiana now.
Okay.
Is there any reimbursement in there for some of these agents that have continued going on to do the work? And then y'all pick it up from where they left off? That was another question that comes up in a long-term recovery.
Any reimbursement that we have for a homeowner is going to go to that homeowner. What they do with the money, of course, would be up to them. One alternative that I know that some nonprofits have done is become a contractor for the folks so that we can reimburse the contractor, if you will, for doing the work. But in general, the federal regulations, I think I saw Earl Randall here earlier, is he still here? The federal regulations even count charitable donations and volunteer work as a duplication of benefits. Same as SVA or insurance or anything else. So in the event that you do that work as a contractor to the homeowner, it changes that dynamic.
And for them to become a contractor, they have to meet certain qualifications.
They do. So they have to be licensed contractors and all that.
So basically, there's not any...
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Short answer.
One clarification. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And welcome to
And Catholic Charities does a great job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Charles Tate, you may come forward, please. Mr. Tate, I barely could read. I'm not good at your handwriting.
I apologize, I'm not very good at it.
Just tell us a little bit who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Charles Tate, I'm still glad to reside in Baton Rouge, also involved with affordable housing development. I have a small hand, I've played historically with about $80 million worth of work, primarily for nonprofits.
Okay.
You heard Mr. Forbes talk. Well, first, before I go any further, thank y'all so much for all the work you're doing in behalf of the people of Louisiana. No kidding. When you took this oath, when you agreed to take this oath, for better or worse, you might have asked, well, how much worse? The same thing with some of our elected leaders. The governor's leadership on down through his staff has been just really something to be proud of. And I want to thank y'all, and I'm not just saying that. So, apparently there's going to be some affordable housing rental resources freed up and maybe repurposed. To some extent, we don't know. Mr. Forbes, a moment ago, said that perhaps, informally, said maybe by next month. And I want to echo what he had said about the affordable housing shortage for rental housing and home ownership, but also rental housing across the state before these floods even occurred. And I thought this might be interesting to you. Across the country, we know that 1 out of 5 households is rent burdened across the country. There's no exception here. The assistance that people generally get to facilitate the ability to provide housing and cover their other family expenses tends to be either Section 8, here's your portable voucher, go find yourself a place, or project-based rental assistance. I'm here to talk about the latter category. This flavor of affordable housing is literally irreplaceable. So if we're trying to figure out moving forward how to most cost effectively preserve the resources we know that are available that are irreplaceable, due consideration ought to be given to preserving, recapitalizing and preserving long-term that flavor of affordable housing I just mentioned. I saw the per unit cost, as we all did, for the work that's been done. Far and away the less expensive cost is for preservation, rehab versus new construction. I also saw the affordability restrictions, which vary depending on the type of housing. There are a lot of examples what I'm going to tell you about, but for example, I know of one in St. Martin Parish 35 years old. The original owners, except for one, have moved on, passed away. There's one left standing. A nonprofit would like to acquire it. HUD will mandate a 40 or 50-year affordability restriction. To me, that's one example. You'll be hearing more because people are going to rightfully want to advocate for example, a nonprofit acquisition. We're going to have long-term preservation of affordable housing, the type you just heard me talk about. You want to talk about resilience? Let's be sure our folks continue to have a place to live, and this is a very cost-effective way to get there. But back to the point, thank y'all for all your time and all your services. I mean, really, no kidding. Thank y'all very much.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. All right. Other business, there's no more comments. Anybody else may have walked in? Okay. Next order of business is other business, item 10, and GOSEP Task Force update is tab 6. Per the request of the Task Force, OCD has provided us with the AMI, average median income tiers, and a glossary of terms in tabs 7 and 8. And our next meeting will be in October, somewhere October 20th or 27th?
Yeah.
Right, on one of those 2 Fridays. So we will hear from Lori somewhere in the next 2 weeks on that meeting time. And we believe it's going to be in Slidell. Possibly. Okay. Any comments from the front desk up here? Anybody? Okay, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Look, no, thank you. You doing all right?